The other day, I thought I'd had a great idea of doing a series profiling the owners of football clubs and detailing how they acquired their wealth, any interesting aspects to their backstory, and how they'd come to own the club in question. It seemed like a great idea until I discovered that Tifo Football had done a similar series called Meet the Owners, and whilst I would have liked to have gone into a bit more detail than they did, I suspect the market has been somewhat saturated. As someone who is fairly late to the football YouTube scene and very late to making longer form documentary style videos, I sometimes feel like I'm stuck in the Simpsons already did it episode of South Park, if any of you get that reference. Anyhow, whilst that idea was ruined, I thought I could make a much more concise, but hopefully still rather entertaining video looking at all of the Premier League owners in quick succession. Naturally, there'll be very little deep examination of owners in this video, but more of an overview as to how they came into such enormous riches, given that the majority of Premier League owners are now billionaires. I also thought it would be interesting to see how many were self-made, how many had just inherited a loan of money, and how many fell somewhere in between. Some clubs have multiple owners, so for the headline it'll be however the majority shareholder acquired their wealth, but I'll try to mention all major shareholders in the segment itself. Here is a very quick look at how every Premier League owner made their money. Arsenal. Real estate. I have put real estate as the headline, but if we're being honest, the reason Stan Kroenke is so rich is because he married a very rich woman, who in turn is only very rich because her dad and uncle were the co-founders of Walmart, which is the biggest company on earth in terms of revenue. Kroenke married Walmart heiress Ann Walton in 1974, and he used his newfound wealth to found a real estate firm called the Kroenke Group. Naturally, Kroenke has since made plenty of money of his own through real estate, farming, and numerous sports and esport franchises. As well as Arsenal, Kroenke owns the Los Angeles Rams, the Denver Nuggets, Colorado Avalanche, Colorado Rapids, Colorado Mammoth, and Los Angeles Gladiators, and he has an estimated net worth of $10 billion. Aston Villa. Investments. Aston Villa are owned by the NSWE Group, which is jointly owned by Nassif Sawiris and Wesley Edens. Sawiris is the world's fourth richest African with a $9.5 billion net worth as the son of a billionaire and the family patriarch Onzi Sawiris. The Egyptian businessman has an array of business interests, most notably serving as CEO of Oriscom Construction, which was Egypt's first multinational corporation and now has annual revenue in excess of $4 billion. Edens was born in Montana and is the co-owner of New York-based investment firm Fortress Management, which has around $45 billion in assets under management. Edens is also the co-owner of the Milwaukee Bucks, and he has an estimated net worth of around $1 billion. Brighton and Hove Albion. Gambling. As with a number of Premier League owners, Brighton owner and chairman Tony Bloom didn't acquire his wealth through only one avenue. Bloom first came to prominence as a talented poker player who reached the final table of the Poker World Tour, and by 2008, his career winnings totaled $1.5 million. Of course, whilst that is a lot of money, it's not enough to own a Premier League football club, and the majority of Bloom's wealth has been generated through online gambling and gaming websites, property, and investing in startup companies. He has an estimated net worth of £1.3 billion. Burnley. Project management. I almost called Burnley owner Mike Garlick the poorest owner in the Premier League, but I think least wealthy would be a more appropriate term for a man who is worth an estimated £80 million. Certainly, that is still around £80 million more than me. Garlick made his fortune as the founder and CEO of Michael Bailey Associates, a consultancy firm which specialises in the areas of recruitment and workplace management. Chelsea. Oil and investments. Roman Abramovich was the Premier League's first billionaire owner, and he wasted little time making a splash with his cash in English football's top flight. A born entrepreneur who found inventive ways of making money even before the fall of the Soviet Union, Abramovich, like a number of Russians, became filthy rich during the chaotic transition to capitalism. Abramovich's early money actually came through the sale of plastic dolls, but it was through the controversial Loans for Shares program and the $100 million acquisition of 50% of the oil company Sibneft that Abramovich essentially became a billionaire overnight. His $100 million investment was worth more like $2.7 billion, and in 2005, Abramovich sold 72% of his shares in the company to Gazprom for $13 billion. He now resides in Israel and has an estimated net worth of $12.9 billion. Crystal Palace. computer graphics, and investments. Crystal Palace have 3 key shareholders, each with an 18% ownership stake in the club, which combines to give them a controlling interest. They are Steve Parish, David Blitzer, and Joshua Harris. Parish is by far the least wealthy of the trio, with a net worth of £45 million, but he was born in Lewisham and led a consortium that saved Palace back in 2010. Parish made his money by growing a computer graphics company called Tag Worldwide and selling his business in 2011. Blitzer owns a series of sports clubs and has an estimated $1.3 billion net worth thanks to his role as a senior executive at the investment firm Blackstone Group. Harris is the wealthiest of the trio, worth an estimated $4.9 billion, having co-founded the alternative investment firm Apollo Global Management in 1990. Apollo has over $400 billion in assets under management, with 66% of that being invested in the credit business. Everton. Steel and energy. Everton's majority shareholder these days is Farhad Moshiri, who owns 77.2% of the club, as those of you who watched my excellent deep dive into Everton's finances last weekend will be well aware. Moshiri was born in Iran, but his family moved to Britain when he was in his early 20s, shortly before the Iranian Revolution. Moshiri attended UCL, where he trained as a chartered certified accountant before working for 3 of the big 4 accounting firms. The 65-year-old began to get seriously wealthy after he befriended Alisher Usmanov, becoming a minority shareholder in a number of Usmanov's projects, the most lucrative of which is his stake in Russian steel and energy giant Metaloinvest. Moshiri now lives in Monaco as a tax exile with an estimated net worth of $2.4 billion. Fulham. Manufacturing parts for cars. Fulham owner Shahid Khan is the 3rd richest owner in the Premier League, with an estimated net worth of $7.9 billion. Born in Pakistan, but educated in the United States, Khan founded a company called Flexengate whilst he was still studying at university, which manufactured parts for automobiles and specialised in car bumpers. Once he left university, Khan took out a $50,000 loan to expand the business, and it worked. Within a decade, Flexengate had become the sole supplier of bumpers to Toyota, the biggest car company on earth. Flexengate is now the 49th largest private company in the United States, with annual revenue in excess of $8 billion. Leeds United. Sports media. Following a series of rather suspect owners, Leeds United finally seemed to get someone more reputable when Andrea Radrizzani arrived at the club in 2017. With an estimated net worth of $550 million, Radrizzani isn't enormously wealthy by Premier League standards, but he has invested well during his time at Ellen Road. The 46-year-old has always worked in sports media distribution, with his first big break coming when he founded a company which secured the rights to broadcast the Premier League, La Liga and the Champions League in Singapore. He went on to sell the business for a significant fee and now runs 11 Sports through his investment firm Ace Ventures, which broadcasts various different sporting competitions in 10 different countries. Leicester City. Travel retail. Ayawat C. Watanaprapa is the chairman and CEO of both the King Power Group and of Leicester City, and he has a net worth of almost $5 billion. That makes Ayawat one of the youngest billionaires on earth, but he will wish he hadn't come into all of that money and responsibility quite so soon, since it was the result of his father's death following a helicopter crash outside of the King Power Stadium in 2018. His late father Vichai was the founder of the King Power Group, who operates a large chain of duty-free retail outlets in Thailand. Liverpool. Investments and sports franchises. Liverpool owner John Henry is the son of soybean farmers, and he began his business career trading corn and soybean futures. Once he had learnt the ropes of trading commodities, the asthmatic investor founded John W. Henry & Company in 1981, which immediately enjoyed success offering management services to large commodity brokerage firms. Henry's business operated using mechanical determinations to eliminate human emotion in trading, and with his newfound wealth, he began acquiring newspapers and sports teams. Henry now owns the Boston Red Sox, the Boston Globe, and Liverpool FC, among others, giving him an estimated net worth of $2.6 billion. Manchester City. Literally royalty, and oil. Mansour bin Zayed bin Sultan bin Zayed bin Khalif Al Nahyan, who is thankfully better known in Britain as Sheikh Mansour, is the wealthiest owner in the Premier League, with an estimated net worth in excess of $20 billion. Mansour's father, Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, was the ruler of Abu Dhabi for 30 years and the president of the UAE for 33 years, and is often referred to as the father of the nation. Mansour has 6 children, 2 wives, and 1 yacht. He has spent his whole life as a key player in Emirati politics and business, with the majority of his wealth stemming from the UAE's large oil exports. He has used that wealth to invest in companies like Virgin Galactic and Sky News Arabia, as well as the City Football Group, which either owns or part-owns 10 different football clubs. Manchester United. Real estate. Malcolm Glazer controversially took control of Manchester United in the early 2000s prior to his death in 2014. Glazer made the majority of his $4 billion fortune through his real estate business, First Allied Corporation, which owns and rents out shopping centres across the United States. Following Malcolm's death in 2014, most of his business ventures have come under the joint ownership of his children, including Avram, Brian, and Joel Glazer. Joel seems to be the driving force among the trio, at least in terms of Manchester United, where he serves as co-chairman. The Glazer family's business interests now extend beyond real estate, with investments in a number of sports franchises, as well as a controlling interest in the New York-based holding company HRG Group, which was founded by a group of investors, including George H.W. Bush. Newcastle United. High street retail. Unpopular Newcastle United owner Mike Ashley made his fortune as a sportswear retailer, operating on low margins, but a high volume of sales. He started out with a £10,000 family loan, equivalent to more than £30,000 now, and further private investment allowed him to rapidly expand his chain, which was then known as Sports Soccer. The company eventually became known as Sports Direct, and Ashley expanded his business empire through the purchase of distressed companies like Dunlop Slazenger, Kangol, and Lonsdale. In 2018, Ashley acquired House of Fraser after the department store group went into administration. His business interests are now held in a holding company called Frasers Group, which also owns brands like Jack Wills, Flannels, and USC. Ashley's net worth is reported to be just shy of £2 billion. Sheffield United. Literally a Saudi prince. Saudi royal and businessman Abdullah bin Musad bin Abdulaziz seems to have always taken a keen interest in football. He bought Saudi outfit Al Hilal in 2002, Sheffield United in 2013, and he has since acquired clubs in Belgium and India as well. Abdullah is the nephew of King Faisal, who led Saudi Arabia from 1964 to 1975, when he was assassinated by Faisal bin Musaid. Musaid was another of Faisal's nephews, and he was Abdullah's half-brother. He was publicly beheaded with a gold-handled sword after Saudi court sentenced him to be executed. So if you ever think you've got family problems, it could always be worse. Abdullah was obviously born into enormous wealth, but he also founded Saudi Arabia's largest paper manufacturing business in 1989, and he has a modest net worth, by Premier League standards, of just £200 million. Southampton. Real estate. Little is known about Southampton's majority shareholder, Zhao Zhisheng, who acquired an 80% stake in the club for £210 million back in 2017. Zhisheng is believed to reside in London, and he became extremely wealthy during China's economic boom during the 1990s. Zhisheng founded a real estate company called Landa, whose share price exploded in 2015, although the company's valuation has since returned to roughly pre-2015 levels. Having previously had a focus on shopping centres, it was in 2015 that Zhisheng's business empire turned its attention to sport, and began agreeing lucrative deals to build football stadiums throughout China. Zhisheng, who has had some shady business dealings in the past, has an estimated net worth of £3.1 billion. Whilst his acquisition of Southampton was seen as one of the most significant moves in China's growing football empire, and as something that would be appreciated by Chinese President Xi Jinping, Zhisheng is now rumoured to be looking to sell the club. Tottenham Hotspur. Trading and investments. Tottenham's majority shareholder Joe Lewis is Britain's 5th richest person, with an estimated net worth of $5.6 billion. Lewis's father owned a catering business named Tavistock Banqueting, which he helped to grow before inheriting the company. He sold the business in 1979, which was his initial source of wealth, before moving into currency trading. Lewis found success in this business, most famously profiting enormously alongside George Soros from the devaluing of the pound in 1992. Lewis still works in Forex, as well as having a vast array of other investments, owning more than 200 companies and significant real estate. Despite his enormous wealth, Lewis could be even richer if he hadn't lost over $1 billion when Bear Stearns collapsed during the 2008 financial crash. West Bromwich Albion. Construction. Another elusive and secretive Chinese billionaire, whose name I can't pronounce, Lai Guoshuan, whose name I will pronounce as Dave for the purpose of this video, since that's probably more accurate, bought West Bromwich Albion for £200 million in 2016. A rather unpopular figure at the Hawthorns, Dave lives in Guangzhou and has only ever attended a handful of West Brom games. Whilst little is known about Dave's early years, the primary source of his wealth appears to be his Palm Eco Town development company, which he helped grow into one of China's largest landscape development and construction firms. Dave has an estimated net worth just shy of £3 billion. West Ham United. Lingerie and pornography. Welshman David Sullivan is West Ham's majority shareholder, owning 51.1% of the club. Meanwhile, his co-owner David Gold controls a 35.1% stake. Once famously labelled the Dildo Brothers by Sporting Club de Portugal's president, West Ham's owners both made their initial wealth through softcore pornography. Sullivan started out selling pornographic photographs before expanding into sex shops, adult magazines, and low-budget blue movies. He used his early wealth to invest in property in London, which would skyrocket over time, giving him an estimated £1.15 billion net worth. Gold also started out producing adult magazines, followed by sports newspapers, and he now owns the retailer Ann Summers, who specialise in lingerie and sex toys. Wolverhampton Wanderers. Investments. The three key men involved in ownership of Wolverhampton Wanderers have a combined estimated net worth of around $10 billion, and they are all founders of the Chinese conglomerate Fosun International. Fosun owns more companies than I can care to list in what is already a pretty lengthy video, and their tentacles extend to virtually every sector of Chinese business. The company has annual revenues of more than $20 billion, with significant income from their real estate, media, and banking and financial services investments partly responsible for that enormous figure. So that is it for today's video, but thank you as ever for watching. Do give us a like if you enjoyed the video, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and make sure that you are subscribed and have notifications turned on for HITC Sevens, because it really would be foolish not to. If you are an enormous fan of the channel, you can also find me on Twitter or Instagram via the username of @HITC Sevens.